The only happy man in the city. Have you ever met someone so innocent that the modern world looked completely mad through their eyes? This is the funny, emotional, and eye-opening story of Julian, a cheerful village man who entered a big city for the very first time, and almost ran away believing every single person there had lost their mind. Far away between green hills and quiet rivers stood a tiny village where life moved slowly like a lazy afternoon. Birds sang every morning, cows walked peacefully through dusty roads, and everyone knew each other by name. In that village lived a simple man named Julian. Julian was not rich. He owned only a small wooden house, 2 pairs of clothes, and a goat named Bella, who followed him everywhere like a loyal dog. But Julian smiled more than anyone else in the village. He laughed loudly, shared his food, and slept every night without worries. One by one, however, people started leaving the village. Some said the city had better jobs. Others said the city had giant buildings, shining lights, fast cars, and magical machines. Every month, another family packed their bags and disappeared. Soon the village became quieter than ever. The bakery closed. The market became empty. Even Julian's best friend Marcus left after saying, "You should come too someday. The city has everything." For many nights, Julian sat outside his little house, staring at the stars. If the city has everything, he wondered, why did Marcus look so tired when he left? Still, curiosity slowly grew inside him. Finally, one bright morning, Julian packed a small knapsack with bread, cheese, socks, and a picture of his parents. He hugged Bella the goat goodbye, locked his tiny house, wore his cleanest shirt, and began walking toward the city with excitement dancing in his eyes. After hours of travel, Julian finally saw the city. His mouth dropped open. Buildings touched the clouds. Loud horns screamed everywhere. Huge screens flashed bright advertisements. People rushed around so quickly that Julian wondered if the entire city was late for the same wedding. The moment he entered the city gates, 2 policemen stopped him. "Where are you going?" one officer asked suspiciously. "To look around," Julian answered with a smile. "Why are you smiling?" asked the second officer. "Because I'm happy." The 2 policemen looked at each other nervously. One officer whispered, "Nobody this poor smiles this much. He must be hiding something." They searched Julian's bag and found bread, socks, and a carrot for the journey. "Where is your money?" the officer demanded. "I only had enough for the bus ride," Julian replied happily. The policeman looked even more confused. Finally, after many strange questions, they let him go. As Julian walked away, he heard one policeman whisper, "Definitely suspicious. Keep an eye on that man." Julian scratched his head. "What a strange place," he muttered. The first thing Julian noticed was that nobody walked normally. Everyone rushed like their shoes were on fire. Men ran while eating sandwiches. Women spoke angrily into phones. Even old people hurried across roads carrying bags heavier than themselves. There must be something exciting happening today, Julian thought. Curious, he decided to follow a man wearing a grey suit who looked especially busy. For 3 whole hours, Julian followed the man through crowded streets, noisy trains, and giant buildings. The man never smiled once. Finally, he entered a tiny apartment, dropped his bag, stared silently at a wall for 10 seconds, and fell asleep sitting in a chair. "That's it?" Julian whispered in disbelief. He hurried all day just to come home and stare at a wall? Julian suddenly felt tired just watching him. That night, Julian slept in a city park. The ground was covered with plastic bottles, paper cups, and wrappers. Since all the trash bins were empty, Julian smiled proudly. "These city people are amazing," he said. "They must have invented paper flowers that grow from the ground." The next morning, his smile disappeared. A man walked by, opened a candy bar, and casually threw the wrapper onto the grass. Julian gasped. "Oh no," he said sadly. "The flowers are actually garbage." As Julian continued exploring, He reached enormous warehouses filled with lights and music. Hundreds of people walked in carrying shopping bags. "Aha!" Julian shouted excitedly. "This must be the greatest museum in the world." Inside, Julian stared at shelves full of strange objects. One machine made coffee in 20 different styles. Another device could speak, play music, show pictures, and somehow still run out of battery every hour. Why invent one thing that does 20 jobs badly, Julian wondered, instead of 20 things that each do one job properly? Then he noticed a woman proudly buying a very expensive watch. Julian smiled at her politely and asked, "Excuse me, does your watch show minutes?" The woman blinked. "No." "Seconds?" "No." "Then what does it show?" The woman lifted her wrist proudly. The brand name. Julian nearly choked in confusion. A few minutes later, he saw another woman buying shoes with heels so high they looked like tiny ladders. "Can you run in those?" Julian asked. "Of course not," she replied. "Can you climb hills?" "No." "Can you walk comfortably?" The woman looked offended. "They are not for comfort, they are for fashion." Julian stared silently for several seconds before whispering, "City people truly are brave." Wanting to understand more, Julian followed the woman with the expensive watch. At first she looked proud and confident, but when she met her friends, one of them laughed. "That watch is old already," her friend said. Another added, "Everyone wears the newer model now." Instantly the woman's happy face collapsed. Julian could not believe it. She spent so much money just to feel sad 5 minutes later, he thought. In his village, people used things until they broke. Here, people seemed unhappy the moment they bought something new. By evening, Julian sat near a playground feeling disappointed. Maybe the city was not magical after all. Then he noticed a group of children laughing, running and chasing one another. Finally, Julian smiled again. "Ah," he said happily. "At least children still know how to enjoy life." But one boy sat alone holding a small gaming console. His face looked angry. His fingers attacked the buttons like a woodpecker pecking a tree. Every few seconds he shouted things like, "No, stupid game!" and "I hate this level." One little girl invited him kindly. "Come play with us." "Go away," the boy yelled without even looking up. Julian watched carefully. That terrible machine is clearly making the poor child miserable, he thought. Trying to help, Julian walked over gently. "My boy," he said kindly. "Sometimes happiness is found outside little angry boxes." Before the child could react, Julian grabbed the console, threw it dramatically onto the ground, and stomped on it like a dancing chicken. Crack! The screen shattered into pieces. For 1 second there was complete silence. Then chaos exploded. "My game!" the boy screamed. "That cost hundreds!" shouted another child. Parents jumped from benches like superheroes. One woman dropped her coffee. A man began chasing Julian while still holding a hot dog. Even a tiny dog barked furiously at him. Julian ran faster than he had ever run in his life. "I freed the child from sadness," he shouted while escaping. "You destroyed his birthday gift," yelled an angry father. Julian raced through streets, jumped over puddles, dodged bicycles, and accidentally knocked over a man dressed as a giant pizza slice, advertising a restaurant. Hours later, Julian finally escaped onto the quiet road leading back to his village. Breathing heavily, he looked back at the shining city lights. Maybe I am the mad one, he thought at first. But then, he remembered the tired faces, the endless rushing, the lonely apartments, the garbage on the streets, and the people buying things that never truly made them happy. Julian slowly smiled. "No," he whispered. "Maybe the world has simply forgotten how to live." When Julian finally reached his village days later, he hugged Bella the goat tightly and laughed with relief. From that day on, whenever travelers visited and bragged about the city, Julian would simply smile and say, "In the city, people have everything, except time to enjoy it." And strangely enough, many travelers became very quiet after hearing those words. Moral of the story: real happiness does not come from expensive things, endless rushing, or trying to impress others. True happiness comes from simple living, meaningful relationships, peace of mind, and enjoying the little moments of life.